Mic check one,
So
two.
get out of here with them weak ass shoes, yo.
Balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. What's up, Balls Deep fam? To another edition of Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan, where we dive balls deep in the hottest stories in sports. This week, we have for you a few news across the sports world, you can say. But let's just get started. It was announced that Cleveland, I call them Cleveland for now, is changing their name from the Indians, which we knew they were already planning to, but now it was announced that they are changing it to the Guardians. So, uh, I know my initial reaction was to the name. They even showcased it with the logo and what have you. Um, I think they have multiple logos at that. But my question to you is like, are you a fan of the name, or a fan of the new name, I should say?
Um, uh, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not great. I mean, I almost just wish they would have left Indians. I mean, I get it. They were changing it because it was like, oh, it was offensive and stuff. But obviously, it doesn't offend me because I'm not a part of that group of people. But I don't know that Cleveland Indians was so offensive as like Redskins was because obviously we know Redskins was derogatory for obvious
Yeah,
reasons. But I don't know that Cleveland Indians was all that derogatory at all. And I know it was more so a name to try to pay homage to like, um, you know, the first Indian baseball player in the MLB years ago. So I don't know. I didn't dislike the name Cleveland Indians, but I get with, the changes and everything that's going on in the world, they wanted
yeah.
to kind of follow suit. So I'm not big on the name Guardians. Um, cool, good on them that they changed their name. Um, I mean, they could have done better than Guardians. Like Cleveland baseball team. That would have been pretty cool.
No, no. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I do wish they kept the Cleveland Indians. Cleveland Guardians. When I think of Guardians, I immediately think of like guardian angels. So like I think of the angels. So I'm like it's kind of overlaps in a way. And then when I think of Guardians, I don't really think of Cleveland. But then I get what you're talking about, how Redskins was derogatory and made sense for them to change it, but Indians not really. But my thing is, I think they didn't want to use Indians as like representation of their team. So which is why they changed their logo from the Chief Woohoo to the C.
Yeah,
And I understand that, but I didn't really get why they would change their name, because then you have like the Kansas City Chiefs, but which is almost similar, but they use the arrowhead instead of like the representation of the Indian. But
yeah,
you kind of get what they're referencing at. So
of course.
I feel like they could have went the same route as them, unless the Chiefs end up changing their name, which I doubt. No one seems to have an issue with that one. Um, so they could have went to the Chiefs. A lot of people were talking about they could have went to the Spiders, because back in the day they were referred to as the Spiders, which I probably would have preferred the Spiders than the Guardians, just because it it kind of is already part of their history.
Yeah,
So I'm not against Guardians, because Guardians isn't a bad name,
it's
but it
not.
almost feels like they looked at the what is the league called, the football league? Was it the not the
XFL.
CFL?
Yeah,
Yeah, they looked at the XFL and was like, "Oh, I like that name.
yeah.
Let's go with
That
that
that's
name." And
exactly
then
what the name made me think of is the XFL, the New York Guardians, and I was like,
yeah,
I don't
so
really like it all that
so
much.
yeah, I wasn't mad at the name, so I'm not against the name change, but I can't stand the logo.
it's it's literally a baseball with two G's on the side, and I don't know if it has wings or not, but still, it still looks very premature. I feel like they should have just announced the name and come up with a logo later, or even have just the fans vote on names,
Yeah.
similar to what they've done with the yard goats over here in Hartford.
Yeah, no, I agree. And be honest with you, I don't really care much for the logo either. I mean, especially in this like day and time where we have so much technology and editing has like taken, you know, a step to a whole nother level, and like it's almost like there's nothing that's impossible to do when you're editing and like making like concept art and all those types of things that I think they could have done a way better job at making their logo. I mean, you see stuff all the time. Like, I don't know who watches us that's on TikTok or any of the social media pages, but like even on TikTok, there are people who will literally edit logos for companies. Like, oh, this would be a logo if I edit it for Xbox. You know what I mean? Like, if I was editing for Xbox, what would I do for them? And like, I've seen stuff like that, and like people make really impressive things. So I'm just like, you should have had somebody up on there, had somebody on there made you sign. You know what I mean? Like, I just think
We
their
we might need to hit them up.
their art is just not there. It seemed like it was
Yeah,
forced with those G's a little bit.
yeah, we might need to hit them up for a logo. We'll see. But yeah, it definitely seemed very. It almost seemed like a rookie in the field made that logo because it was very basic and
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know.
Didn't
It
seem like there was
didn't.
much
It
thought
didn't
going into it.
exactly. But I do appreciate them taking their time in terms of coming up and or coming identifying the Guardians as the name in
Yeah.
which they want to go by. But it, like I said, not against it, but I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of it.
Hey man,
So
like I said, I would
it'll
have.
have to, yeah, it'll have to grow on me, but because
Yeah.
I've grown to love, not love, but grown to enjoy like Cleveland Indians, and I
Yeah.
actually enjoyed the Chief Woohoo logo, but I understand how it could be offensive and why they got rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's just
Yeah.
not my cup of tea, I guess.
Like I said, man, should have went with Cleveland baseball team. That would have
No,
been it. That would have been solid. Yeah.
no,
What you mean? The football team is growing on me already, man. So I don't know. I don't dislike the name.
no.
Think it.
I definitely dislike the name because I keep like I always call them the Redskins, and then I'm like, wait, no, that's not their name. It's the football team. It's definitely corny, so I hope they change it too. Yeah. And you might enjoy it more, or it might be growing on you because you watch soccer more. That's typically what they call their clubs. So, uh, yeah. But to shift over from baseball, big news in college football: Texas A and I mean not Texas A&M, Texas and Oklahoma are trying to change the landscape of college football and jump to the SEC. So they've already notified the Big 12 that they will not renew the media rights after expiration in 2025. They've already made requests to join the SEC. So my question to you is, what do you think of the move, and how will this impact the landscape of college football, especially with a new expanded playoffs looming in the near future?
I mean, it'll definitely change a lot in terms of the fact that like we know the SEC is kind of. I mean, there's five Power Five conferences, but like the SEC has always been one of the top, obviously, for good reason. They have programs like Alabama is the big one. They have Auburn, they have Georgia. I'm pretty sure they have Tennessee. Like they have a lot of
LSU.
LSU. They have a ton of good programs in that conference, like a ton of good programs in each division in that conference. So adding another team like a Texas A&M or an Oklahoma, obviously, we've always had years in the college football playoffs where we nearly see multiple teams from the Big Ten or the SEC, almost going to the playoff. I think we'll start to see that a lot more often in the SEC. Um, where we see, especially if we have the expanded playoffs with say like 6 teams, there might be times where we see like three, SEC teams in the playoffs, maybe even four, depending on what their schedules are looking like. Obviously, if they have to play each other multiple times, and even then they could still make the playoff. But yeah, I mean, in that sense, definitely changes the scope of everything, due to the fact that I mean, we might even see Alabama start to see a tougher schedule. I mean, people have complained over the years like they didn't think Alabama. I mean, no complaints from me. If you get to the playoffs and you beat who you got to beat and you win a championship, good on you, regardless if your schedule was trash or not. I mean, you did what you had to do. You beat the good teams when you had to face them. But I mean, we might start to see Alabama slip up a lot more. Start to see a lot more challenging back to back weeks for Alabama. So that would definitely make the game more interesting. For that division that's already so stacked, it might make it more competitive. Um, so I'm excited to see it. I know you were talking about it a little bit, so I'll let you get to your points before I, kind of, take them from you. But yeah, I mean, so I kind of have an idea of which team will be entering this conference if it even happens, and which almost definitely won't, due to kind of what you're gonna say. So,
Yeah.
which is also another interesting take and something that I didn't even know was possible. So, but go ahead.
Thanks for spoiling. Thanks for spoiling.
No, that's why I didn't spoil. You know what I mean? Let's
No,
say,
but yeah. So I'll start by saying this. I'm not a fan of the move.
okay.
So I'm not a fan of them jumping to the SEC. Just because it's very hypocritical. Because look, there's two programs that are now in the transfer portal. You can say they're in the transfer portal. Yeah, it's technically not till 2025, but still they're in the transfer portal, and they held students accountable, and like some of which can't participate because they lose a year of eligibility and things of that nature. But and kids do that more for financial reasons because they have a better opportunity elsewhere. But look at these schools; they're doing the same thing,
Yeah,
financial reasons, and they feel like they have better opportunity elsewhere. And and a lot of people realize that the SEC is the top conference in football, and that's exactly why these schools are trying to jump to the SEC so they can take advantage and be a benefactor of that conference in itself. Then that goes to show this is where what Jovan was hinting at. According to an ex member of the SEC, I think he was a admin or athletic director or something like that of a program in the SEC. Supposedly, they have a rule in place where schools currently in the conference can block other schools from the same state from joining. So, from saying that, I highly doubt that Texas joins the SEC. I doubt they get approved because A&M, from a recruiting standpoint, they hold an advantage when they go into recruits' houses, and because they can pitch like, "Hey, we're the only school in Texas in the SEC," and we already know the NFL pays attention to the SEC because a lot of the best football players played in the SEC. Not saying all of them, but a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
them
That's very true.
they go through the SEC, and a lot of the best coaching is in the SEC as well. So they have that pitch. So why kind of compromise themselves by allowing Texas into the program? Because we already know Texas is the bigger program between Texas and Texas A&M. So you let them in the SEC. Now, if a recruit it comes down to Texas and Texas A&M, it's more than likely they're going with Texas, especially with the history that they have and what have you. So uh, that's that. And then plus, just because they requested to join the SEC doesn't mean that they're going to get approved to join the SEC, whether they get blocked or not. So it definitely has to be voted amongst the schools in the SEC first, and which is why A&M has the opportunity to block Texas if they have the chance. But I see why, for example, Oklahoma would want to join just because we already know they have a top-notch offense every year, but defensively is where they fall. They lack. But why? Because a lot of the top, you know, defensive recruits, go to the SEC, primarily to Bama, LSU, You can say Georgia, and that's not even including like Ohio State, who's not in the SEC. But there's a lot of recruits that go to these programs in the SEC. So you go to the SEC from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to benefit you, and I can see why they're leaving. But what blows my mind is so they're talking about expanding the playoffs to 12 teams. That's a big jump from the 4 we have now. But 12 teams, and then the top 5 seeds would be the winners of the Power 5 conferences. So you just won your conference, I think, 5 to 6 years straight, and that would be a free pass to the playoffs. But now you go to the SEC, you might not even make the playoffs.
Very true.
Because I'm not saying that the program stinks, but you only have a limited amount of teams that can come out of the conference, and you already named a list of them that are in the conference, and like LSU is always going to be in the running, Georgia's always going to be in the running, Bama's always going to be in the running, and then there's teams like Tennessee who could be in the running, A&M who could be in the running. Like you never
Auburn,
know.
who's very
Auburn,
frequently makes a
yeah,
name for
exactly.
themselves.
Exactly. So there's those teams that are up and down, but then there's those teams that are consistently mentioned when they predict the college football playoffs. So
We even talk about
now,
Florida. The Gators are in there
yeah,
too.
even Florida. Look, exactly. So now, prime example, like you're risking opportunity to make the playoffs, but you're pitched to recruits. So from recruiting standpoint, it's good. Competition standpoint, it's good because you're playing the best of the best. So now you can recruit these players and tell them like you're going to play against the best. You're going to be on TV. You're more than likely going to make the playoffs, but you'll definitely get eyes from the NFL. Like as long as you hit the field. So from a recruiting standpoint, it's good. From competition standpoint, you could say it's good, but you might be losing out on an opportunity to represent your school or state in the playoffs because of the move. But from financially, they're going to benefit from it, and that's exactly why they're going to do it. Texas, I didn't even get to Texas, but that's because I'm expecting them to get blocked. But should they get moved, like Texas hasn't been as relevant as they have in years, in like they haven't been as relevant as they should be or as they normally are. They just got Steve Sarkisian from Bama to be their head coach. So and um, they seem to be the favorite to get Arch Manning when he declares to go to college. So the move, if they get approved to the SEC, I'm pretty sure they're gonna get Arch Manning. Like they seem to be the favorite, and then I think Clemson is like number 2. So they seem to be the favorite. So if they move to the SEC, I'm pretty sure he'll go there, especially because it's a big program and you're playing in the SEC. But if you don't go there, you're just back to square one. From the geological standpoint, it doesn't make sense, but I would like for them to join the Big Ten if they can't join the SEC.
Yeah, I'm just curious at what either of these teams would mean for the Big 12. Because I mean, like you said, there's always been some solid offenses in the Big 12, more specifically Oklahoma, obviously. Um, but the competition level from the Big 12, if you lose a team like Oklahoma or Texas, either one, and like you said, if one goes, say one goes to the SEC, and then one goes to the Big 10, like you said, what does that mean for the Big 12 now, kind of lacking in competition? Because you have the Baylor Bears, who are basically a shell of themselves in the last few years. You have Texas Tech, who always, has a solid offense, is able to put up points, but they're not really a solid team. Um, Texas, again, they might leave, but even if they stayed, I mean, they've been a shell of themselves for years and just recently have been kind of bringing their program back to like what they consider is like the glory days. I mean, you have Iowa State, who's been pretty competitive as of late, but how long is their program going to be able to keep up with some of these top programs? So now you have an issue where the Big 12 isn't really sending, like you said, if they expand these playoffs to 12 teams, which, in my opinion, going from 4 straight to 12 is a little bit ridiculous. I think that's a bit too much. I think adding a few teams is okay, but adding that many more teams, 8 more teams, is a little bit too much in my opinion. But say you add 12 teams,
I was a fan. I was a fan of 8, but they
yeah,
seem to be leaning
100%.
towards 12.
12 is a lot. But say you add 12 and you have all 5 power conferences, or even 8 in all 5 power conferences, and then the rest are just the next rankings. I mean, you're sending either way. A couple of these teams might make the playoffs based off the fact that it's 12 teams, but either way, just off the bat, that conference winner in the Big 12 is already like the competition level wasn't there. He didn't have to play the same teams that the guys from the Big 10 had to play. He didn't have to play the same guys from the SEC had to play. I mean, it's just they're not sending out their best teams. So that's why I'm asking what it means now for that division. And I mean, there's plenty of other
Yeah,
divisions that would have to deal with the same problem, because obviously even after losing, say Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12, there are still other, Big 5 conferences that aren't strong with what they already have. So it's just like I don't know
yeah,
what it means for the competition level in terms of the playoffs. However, in the SEC and the Big Ten, if there was movement, it would definitely mean a lot more competition throughout the season for the teams involved in those conferences. But otherwise, it makes the playoffs feel a little bit less competitive. Um, but regardless, as long as they get the best 12 teams out there, it won't matter. Um, but they don't always do that correctly, so we'll see.
I mean, regardless of how they expand the playoffs, whether it's 8, 12, there's always going to be programs that are not happy because they feel like they were snubbed. So I think that's why they're moving it to 12. Also, financial reasons, because the college football playoffs are big and obviously moneymakers. So moving it to 12, you have less of that, less chance of error, you can say.
Yeah.
But what it means for the Big 12, it 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 just means that the other programs get more recognition. Like Iowa State has a chance to make a name for themselves. You also have TCU, who has a chance to make a name for themselves. You have the other programs that you mentioned, but I'm looking to them. If both of these teams leave, I'm looking to them like I look at the Pac-12. Pac-12 isn't what they used to be. They have big programs now, so don't get me wrong. Like they have Stanford, they have Oregon, they have USC, they have UCLA, but they do not have the level of competition that these other programs like the Big Ten or SEC or even the ACC have. So maybe you go out and recruit independent programs or try to get other programs to join your conference. I mean, Notre Dame is still available. They're considered independent. I enjoyed when Notre Dame considered themselves to be part of the ACC because now you add competition for Clemson. I hope they decide to stay in the ACC, honestly, because now it gives you a better chance to make the playoffs. I mean, in years past, if you lost your big game, there's no chance for you to actually make the playoffs because you don't have a championship game or a conference championship game. Whereas when they were in the ACC, they had the chance to do so. Like, so I hope they join the a conference, but that's what I look at it as. So you get the other teams a chance to get recognition. You have a chance to recruit other programs. But in terms of talent or in terms of competition, I'm looking at you as the Pac-12. The Pac-12 isn't what they used to be. So and that's exactly what I'm looking at it as. But it almost seems like even those in college football want to be a part of the SEC or the Big Ten. Those seem to be the two programs that seem to get it done, seem to be the money makers. And just look at the college football playoffs in the history. It almost seems like just the same 6 teams that make the playoffs. It's Ohio State, it's Alabama, it's Clemson, it's Georgia, it's LSU, and Oklahoma. I have yet to see. Oh, you could say Notre Dame too, but I have yet to see any other program besides those make the playoffs. And the playoff format has been in place for a few years now. So those within college football recognize that, the fans recognize that, and it's time that they want to, make their money. And benefit from it as well.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I don't know that if they already kind of restarted it in a way with the whole college football playoff. Now they're seemingly almost restarting again, expanding the playoff. I think at this point, maybe it's just better off if you just reshuffle conferences. Like I'd almost make more sense,
Yeah,
just to keep it at a competitive level, to keep everything, um, just to keep everything staying staying the way it should. Just keep the competitive level the way it should be. Keeping the right teams playing against each other. I just feel like it's gonna almost feel cheap uh, for some teams in the way that it almost already does feel.
yeah.
Because like again, like we talked about the SEC, and like obviously there's a ton of good teams in the SEC, but why is it that Bama's only getting one or two of these teams on their schedule? When there's like I mean, there's Florida, there's Georgia, there's
Oh, it's just
Auburn, there's
it.
A&M, there's LSU.
I can explain that, but they
No,
can change the rules. They
no,
can
no,
change
no.
the rules, but
Yeah,
there's two divisions.
yeah,
There's the SEC West and the SEC East.
yeah, in the East,
So the West, Bama is in the West,
the
I believe,
West.
right?
They're in the
Yeah.
West, yes.
So they play all the teams in the West, and then the only time they come against the East is if you're in the championship. I mean, there might be games where you play someone in the East in regular season, but more than likely, the only time you play them is the championship.
Yeah,
Uh, and then same goes with the East. So, and Georgia's in the East, which seems to be why that's always the SEC championship. Besides for this past year where they played Florida because Florida beat Georgia, but yeah, that
no,
rule
yeah.
can be changed. Definitely can.
And that's what I'm saying. I just feel like the level of these teams that are always getting the job done. I feel like even Ohio State, we need to see them. And I mean, I say even Ohio State, although our record is, I mean, our schedule is constantly full of ranked opponents. You know what I mean? But at the same time, even us. I get it. It's the same because the East and West, and that's why we always end up facing either Iowa or Northwestern in the Big Ten championship. But it's like those are such good teams. Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin are really good teams. Like you know what I mean. These are teams that we should be consistently facing throughout the season. Just as Alabama should have to face the guys from the East, just as all the other conferences. Um, you need to have you need to make these schedules a lot tougher. Especially if you want to expand these playoffs, you need to be able to better gauge. All right, we need to find the best 12 teams, and these are definitely them because we've seen everything we need to see. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and they're college football is basically trying to create their own March Madness, you can
yeah,
say, and that's exactly why I'm not a fan of the 12 teams. So I would much prefer them even to go all the way up to 16 teams. Why? Because I feel like no team should have the opportunity to have like a bye week in college football, or especially come playoff time. I feel like everyone should be challenged, whether the matchup is lopsided or or not. Like it's an opportunity for them to play, and it's an opportunity for them to lose. Like it's almost like in the NFL, you can lose on any given Sunday. So in come playoff time, you should be able to lose on any given Saturday because there's a possibility that you can lose, and that's exactly why I feel like if you were talking about competition, it needs to be 8 or 16, like
so you think
that,
if they
and that's
did,
it.
so you think if they do 12 teams, they're gonna go with bye weeks rather than
Well,
just playing?
it's an odd number. So look, there would be six on each side, right? There would be six on each side, and when they and let's say there's six matchups on each side.
Yeah,
Now there's three winners on each side. So what are you
yeah,
gonna do?
that's true. That's very true. I mean, you could still. I mean, it makes. I get what you're saying. It definitely what
And this is
does
just
make
from
sense.
looking
But at
at
the
a
same
bracket in my
time,
head.
if they were to do it and just do 6 games, that in that sense, I mean, you could still do it that way. 12 teams, it would go to 6 games, and then obviously it would cut the teams in half. And then from there it would be 3 games, and so on and so forth. But it definitely would. It would be odd to do it that way. Either way.
So unless they do it almost like in baseball where they do the wild card game and then you go and win,
Yeah.
or even in March Madness where the I think 16 and 15 seeds are in each bracket are then competed for, and then it goes from there. That would probably make the most sense if they go with 12 teams, but I just don't like. I don't like that. I
No,
feel
I
like
get it.
I just go 16 or go 8. And I'm
Yeah.
more going for 8 because I feel like 16 is pushing it, and those teams that are 16 shouldn't be playing
16 is
the.
a good amount of extra games. 16 is a lot of extra teams.
I mean, it
Um,
covers all the bowl games that they seem to want to represent. No one really cares about the bowl games unless you're in the playoffs, in
well,
my
it's true.
opinion.
Nobody really cares as much about the bowl games before. I mean, as much as they did before after adding the college football players. That's definitely
Exactly.
true. Which, if you added 16 teams and then said, okay, this is the bowl game, I mean, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And that's actually a really good idea. Um, but I don't know. In the sense of yeah, you want to get the right teams in the playoffs, but the drop off from like say the top 8 and then the bottom 8 is going to be so high that it's going to be like, why are we watching these games? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I mean, like you said, any given Sunday, or in terms of college football, any given Saturday. But it just doesn't, when it's college football, it's almost more than any other sport, you can see the difference between two teams that are, a top program and not. And that's why you constantly see games where you have college football teams scoring 50, 60 points and their opponent has sometimes not even 20, but, 20 points. And that's why you consistently see that, because the drop off in college sports, more specifically college football,
Yeah.
and the skill level between a number one or even a number six ranked opponent to a number 12 or 13 or 15 ranked opponent is so large that it's almost like I said, any given Saturday, but we really don't need to see the game because we almost always know who's going to win that game.
Yeah, and before we move on to a different topic, I just want to pinpoint this. So, if it was a 16-team bracket, Bama would face from this past season. Bama would face BYU. If it was a 12-team bracket, let's say that I know this wouldn't be how the bracket works, but let's say the number 12 team is Coastal Carolina.
Mhm.
But if it was an 18 bracket, then Bama would most definitely face Cincinnati, and Cincinnati was 9-0. So I think that would be a better fit. Georgia was 9, so even as a Georgia fan, we would still miss the
Yeah,
playoffs. If it was 18, but
and
I'm
since
not mad at that move at
yeah,
all. Like
and
that,
since he was
if you're not a top 8, then that's your fault.
yeah, and Cincy fans were very unhappy they didn't make the playoff, but a lot of people didn't feel like they saw enough from Cincy in their very limited schedule. So again, they were really good last year. But even that, even the difference between a 1 and 8 is pretty big, especially when that one is Bama. They're less likely team to kind of go out there and choke it. If you had like a one seed that was like maybe in Oklahoma, or even as an Ohio State fan, I'll say it. If I see us going against Cincinnati as a one seed and they're an 8 seed, not that it's cause for concern, but it's more likely you're more likely to get that upset. But even then, the drop off from that one team to that 8 seed is so big that it's like, is the competition really there? But it's still, it would make it a lot more interesting seeing Bama against a Cincinnati, who is a good team, rather than seeing them against Coastal Carolina in the first round. It would, in my opinion, be no point in watching that game. I have no
So,
doubt that.
so I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Um, who's at the Florida team that went undefeated and they put up a banner because they didn't make the playoffs and said they were the national champions? I
UCF,
just
University of Central Florida.
Okay, so UCF, for example, that year would have made the playoffs, I believe, if there was 8 teams.
Yeah.
So, and I thought they deserved to make the playoffs as as they should. But if they go 8 teams, then it would be. I think they would talk about uh, each of the Power Five winners plus then the next three would be in terms of ranking. So, hey, I think 8 teams is a better fit, but I think they're looking more from a financial standpoint and money, which is why
Money,
they're trying to reach for uh the bigger bracket. But
definitely.
to shift over from the NCAA college football to the NFL, there's a couple of disgruntled stars in the NFL, and we already talked about Aaron Rodgers in last episode, but I can report right now he's in training camp. he's back, and it was a price to pay for Green Bay because I believe they had to veto or void his last year of his contract, and they also promised him to go out and make a trade for Randall Cobb, which they just made official. So they handled their business. So he's definitely in Green Bay for at least one more year, and I think they're gonna look to trade him, and he has the opportunity to pick where he wants to play. So that's that. We talked about him. And now there's two more. So Chandler Jones of the Arizona Cardinals and Xavier Howard of the Miami Dolphins. They both requested trades from their respective teams due to not being happy with their current contract. They're not happy with their current situation. Chandler Jones, for example, he's seen the Cardinals hand out money left and right to other stars. Uh, just recently J.J. Watt. And it's not that he's jealous of J.J. Watt, but he's happy of the acquisition of J.J. Watt. But he's just mad that he hasn't got his money. When healthy, he's one of the best pass rushers in the league, but he's just seen the Cardinals give out money left and right, and he has not seen any of it. He pretty much outperformed his contract, and that's why he's looking for a new one.
Yeah.
Whereas Xavier Howard, he's doing the same thing. He put out a post on Instagram explaining why he requested a trade. He said he loves his time in Miami and he wants to stay in Miami, but he's tried his best to stay in Miami. He's not even asking for a whole new contract. Like he said when he
Yep.
signed his contract, he wasn't as knowledgeable of the situation, but he's clearly outperformed his contract, and he's not the only one that knows that. He's not even the number one paid corner on his team. And he said that exactly. And it's not a shot at Byron Jones, but he gets the number one assignment defensively, but he's not getting paid number one assignment money.
Yeah.
And he even said he's not asking for a new contract. He even asked for them just to add a couple dollars to his contract, and by doing so, by just guaranteeing more money.
Hmm.
Uh, and they weren't willing to do so. So he said he's tried everything he could possibly do from his part, and exactly why he's declaring a trade. So my question to you is, where do you see these guys fitting? Like where's a fit for them? What do you think of the situation going on? And is there a chance that they even stay?
Um. So I don't think either of them stay. Um. But however, I don't think either of them stay, and I kind of fully understand why they're doing it. Chandler Jones maybe not so much, not as much. He is 31, which isn't. I'm not saying 31 is old. But he's definitely getting up there in age. In terms of being a pass rusher, being a D lineman who's you know really best skill is to rush the pass. He's a really good pass rusher, but he's getting up there in age. So I can see the reluctance in the Cardinals to not want to pay him more money. Um, However, I think I can definitely see him trying to get traded to a team that's kind of just right there. Because in my opinion, I think he makes the Cardinals a lot better team. I think the Cardinals are in the up and up. I think they're a team that is maybe not this year, although I wouldn't doubt it, but maybe another year or two for making an actual really good run in the playoffs. I think Chandler Jones leaving only hurts them, so I think they should try to keep you know hold on to that, especially with the acquisition of J.J. Watt. But I don't see him staying. In terms of Xavier Howard, I was reading up on it a little bit, and I mean, props to the guy. I mean, credit to him. He felt like he was outperforming his contract. Obviously, it sucks because, I mean, it's weird. Um, it sucks because he was outperforming his contract. Um, he was trying to work with them. He said that he was telling them, just give me more guaranteed money. He was trying to, he was trying to shuffle it in a way where it was still cap friendly. He said, him and his manager or agent were trying to be as cap friendly as possible to the Dolphins. We're trying to be as helpful as much to the Dolphins, and they declined it. So he didn't. He said he felt he didn't feel valued. He didn't feel respected. So I almost feel like there's no way he comes back. And also in the sense that, like, he has been outperforming. And why would you want to be, um, covering the number one guys on the team? You're not even getting paid more money than the second corner in your team. But I could definitely see him going to a team like maybe Dallas, maybe Detroit. Um, that'd be yeah, like Dallas or Detroit. I could see him going. But in terms of Chandler Jones, I think he'll go more so to a team that's probably, I don't know who. I don't know where he'd go. I don't know who would be willing to pay him whatever kind of money he wants, because I'm not sure how much he's asking for. Um, but I can see him going to a team that's either right there in terms of competing for a title, because he is 31. I'm assuming he wants to go to a team that he has a good chance at winning, due to the fact that he's up there in age. But a team that, I mean, is on the radar. It's been asking for pass rusher, been begging for pass rusher. I've been begging for pass rusher. The New York Giants. I'd love to see him go to the New York Giants, just because that's probably the weakest spot on the Giants defense, or the Giants team as a whole, in my opinion. Obviously, the O line woes
I
have
don't
been
know about
tough.
that.
I do. The O
But
line
I
woes.
think I'm more confident in the pass rush this year than I have in years past.
That's true.
But if we're talking, if you want to include the pass rushers in the linebacker core, then I don't know. But
Our linebackers aren't solid, but our linebacker core is good as a group. That's
because
why I like our
yeah,
linebacker
but
core.
you could say our pass rush was too, because we were number 12 in sacks last year,
I mean,
and we only got better in terms of depth. I'm not
I
saying
agree.
we don't have that superstar in Chandler Jones. I think I would love Chandler Jones,
That's middle of the
but
road. 12. I only
what
said it
I'm
because
saying,
12 is middle of the road. 12 is not where I want to be. 12 is not bad. It's
but
definitely better than it's the better half of.
think about it. They're 12 in sacks and they're top 10 in defense. So defensively, they're still there.
Oh,
But
100%.
I that's why I'm just disagreeing that it's our weakest part of our team.
Okay. I we can argue. One can argue that it might be the weakest part of our team.
Okay, there you go.
Obviously, we had the O line woes. We kind of solidified it a little bit, but we still haven't seen it on the field. So that's still obviously an argument as well. Our corners, our secondary is, we can't even bash our secondary. Our secondary is probably the best part of our team last year and only got better. Um, so it's really between, the O line, pass rush, and pass rush on the defensive line and linebacker core. But either way, adding a guy like Chandler Jones to already, a team in my opinion that's solid, a team in my opinion that is really just that everybody's looking past, because I've watched a ton about football this upcoming season. I've heard a lot of different reports, a lot of different, takes on who they think is going to do this and that and this. I've not seen one mention of the New York Giants winning even the NFC, even just the NFC East. Haven't seen anybody pick us to even win the East, which is a terrible division right now. I haven't seen anybody pick us for even a dark horse to make a playoff. Like not a single thing. Not
Anyone outside
no
of Giants Nation.
Yeah, nobody believes in the Giants, and I don't blame them. I mean, for good reason. We haven't been good in the last few years, but we were actually a lot better. I mean, I said it last year. Obviously, I wasn't completely serious. I said the Giants were going to win the Super Bowl. However,
Guys, he even made a bet.
I did. I did. Well, and the slight chance that they would have won, it would have been fucking solid. Um, but I did see them getting better, and that's the reason why I was so high on the Giants. And I feel like maybe I was a year early. I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win a Super Bowl this year, but they're a lot better team on paper than they were last year. And if these
But they were a lot better team than the record showed.
oh,
Like they
100%.
were a lot more competitive. Outside of the 49ers game, I think they were in every single game.
Yeah. I mean, we went blow for blow with the Super Bowl champions. It was an amazing game. It was a game we could have won towards the end, and I'm pretty sure we lost it for ourselves. I think it was
We
Evan
did.
Ingram that dropped it. I think it was down to that play.
No, that was the Eagles game. But
Okay,
it
yeah.
was Daniel Jones. It was
Okay,
Daniel
yeah,
Jones.
yeah. So we went blow for blow with the Super Bowl champions. Obviously, it's a regular season game, but still, like the Giants were a lot better team than the record showed, and were a lot better team than anybody anticipated. And I haven't only gotten better on paper. Obviously, you still need those players to kind of come out and and be worth what they were paid. Give the Giants what they're owed on the field. Uh, but if that does turn out, they're going to be a lot better team than I think anybody's giving them credit for. So I think with the addition of a guy like Chandler Jones, which is where we started, I went on a little rant. Um, I think with the addition of Chandler Jones, that defense is already really good. I think that defense then becomes scary. And in the years that the Giants have won the Super Bowl, it was their defense that got the job done. Um, so, hey, man, I don't know. I think that addition for the Giants would be huge, but it depends on how much money he wants.
Yeah, so as for both of the situations, I agree with you when you said that if either of them were to stay, I think it's more likely that Chandler Jones stays. And I think the Cardinals would be stupid not to fess up their money because this is the best team they've had since he's been on the roster.
Hey,
So this is the best chance they have of making noise. So I think, and they seem to be very dependent on the pass rushing duo of Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt. So I think they'd be stupid not to keep him. But should he go, you mentioned the Cowboys for Xavier Howard. I think the Cowboys would be a logical spot for Chandler Jones too because they have the offense. Defensively, they just lack, and pass rushing wise, they are terrible. I mean, they have Tank Lawrence, Demarcus Lawrence, but he can't do it by himself. And a lot of the people that they had on the roster, like Alden Smith, I think is gone. Uh, they have good linebackers, but they don't have good pass rushers. So that would be a team. I could see a reunion with the Patriots uh, because they are one step away as well. They just seem to trying to figure out their offense at this point, and we know Bill Belichick, he can do it all. And another team you already mentioned the Giants, so I won't mention the Giants. But another team that I can see him going to would be the Minnesota Vikings.
mm,
They seem to revamp their defensive line. So they have now Sheldon Richardson, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Danielle Hunter, but they don't have a pass rusher opposite of Hunter.
mm,
They lost that when they got rid of
yeah,
Everson Griffin.
yeah,
So that can be the missing piece to their championship run. A lot of their offensive issues have been with the offensive line. They seem to be trying to rebuild that, but they have the firepower. And then defensively, they have the linebackers, and they just added Patrick Peterson to shore up the secondary. So you can say they have the secondary on paper, but pass rushing wise, that seems to be the missing piece. But I want to say that he stays. I think Cardinals end up fessing up the money for him. But as for Xavier Howard, though, I don't think there's a chance in hell that he stays, and that's because he's actually been trying and willing to stay and work with the team, but he realizes that they don't value him as much as they should. And we talked about this with our Dexter Lawson. Dexter Lawson had him in his top 5 corners um, in the league right now. There's a few comments in our Instagram that had Xavier Howard in the top 5 corners right now, but he's not getting paid top 5 corner money.
yeah.
And so this has to do with the guy that we're going to be talking about next. And I guess you can transition after I talk about it. But the one team that I see him going to outside of Dallas, because Dallas can use as much help defensively as possible. Um, I can see him going to Houston. It's not a win now team, but the reason why I say that is because his current team, the Miami Dolphins, are interested in one guy over there in Houston by the name of Deshaun Watson. So we already know that the asking price for Deshaun Watson is out of this
Way
world,
too high.
even with everything going on with his off the field issues. But should they give them their asking price? They can give them 3 first round picks because they have the assets in the next 2 years. They don't have or next 3 years I believe because they don't have their first round pick this year because they traded it to Philly in terms of trading up.
Yeah,
But they can give them the draft capital, but then you offer Tua to replace what they have over there because there's no need for him in Miami, and then you also give him Xavier Howard because you can say Philly can go get Deshaun Watson, but because they have 3 first-round picks next year, I believe, by itself. But wouldn't you want to make sure you have a sure thing in players? Like Tua is not a sure thing, but he has tons of potential. And
At this
Xavier Howard,
moment, he's a lot. At this moment, he's a lot more sure thing than Deshaun Watson is. At this
well,
moment,
yeah, to play on the field, yes. But then you get a top 5 corner in David Howard, which they've needed corners for years. And then you add them. I think they still have Bradley Roby, so you add him with Bradley Roby, and Reed. I forget his first name off the top of my head. It's not Eric. It's his little brother. But Reed is talented as well. So you just add them, and you're gonna your rebuild is gonna be a lot quicker, a lot sooner as well, because they have the capital to pay him a new contract. They definitely do, and they would be stupid not to. I mean, I don't know if he would accept it, but he's not gonna turn down money. That's exactly why Deshaun Watson didn't turn down money. Like
yeah,
you grab your money and then you make demands later. Like they're not gonna listen to you unless you have that money. So
yeah,
I think Houston would be a perfect fit or not a perfect fit. I think it would be best for both teams to work out a trade like that. In
and yeah,
terms for Xavier Howard, if I'm him, I don't want to go to Houston either. But he's gonna do what he's got to do to make his money.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, if it's Houston, it's Houston.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, speaking on Deshaun Watson, I don't, I don't know, man. I don't know that there's any way he's moving for that price. Not for that price. Like, there's no way he's moving for that price anytime soon. I don't know that. I mean, any team that moves on it, makes a move on him for that price in this moment is taking a huge gamble. Like it's high risk, high reward. Like very high risk. Because we need more clarity on the situation before anybody's getting 3 first rounders for Deshaun Watson. Um, because obviously, with the way the news happened and at the time in which it came out, it's so easy for it to look like a setup. You know what I mean? In terms of the Texans trying to taint his name for him trying to leave. However, um, even if it's not, he's probably never playing football again. Well, not probably. He's never playing football again. If any of that's true, I don't see him ever stepping on a field again. So if that's true, so with that being said, I mean, a team going out and giving up that much is a very high risk. So I don't see him really moving anytime soon for that price.
So what I read, so just to shore up everything before I get into what I was going to say, the Texans are now willing to trade Deshaun Watson,
Yeah.
right? He's reported to training camp, and although he's reported to training camp, he reiterated that he still wants out. So they are now willing to listen to offers and now willing to trade him, but they're seeking a combination of 5 high draft picks, which can very well be at least 3 first round picks and starting caliber players. So Deshaun Watson's no trade clause is determining which teams the Texans will talk to, but Houston's demands are what has held up a deal thus far. So teams are hesitant to overpay for a quarterback who faces, at the time it was 22, I think it's 24 now, pending lawsuits and allegations of sexual assault. Now, as for what I just said, um, what I read up on is that teams that are interested in Deshaun Watson, yes, they're hesitant in terms of paying the price, but they are not looking at Deshaun Watson as a piece now. They're looking at him as like a 12-year investment, which they should, because should he be able to play, he's going to be relevant for that long,
Oh,
right?
definitely.
He's still going to be a top talent at the position. So they're not looking. They're looking beyond this year. So like if they acquire him, might not play this year, but he possibly can play in future years. But as of right now, he's able to play. He's not on the commissioner exempt list. Nothing. Like that's why he reported to training camp. And the only reason why he's reporting to training camp is basically what Marshawn Lynch said. I'm here so I don't get fined. Like
Yeah.
he's because the fines for missing training camp are now guaranteed. Teams can't pick and choose when they want to fine you. So it's a big price to pay. Do I pay the price for him at the moment? Not a chance in hell. But I'm telling you this: if the allegations come out and they're not true, right? Let's say he's innocent of the charges, hypothetically. I think the price goes up because there's going to be a bidding war. They're like right now they're saying there's like 8 teams that are interested in him just with what's going on still currently. If there's no chance that he's in trouble, there's at least 20 teams in the league that are calling the Texans to make sure that he's on their team.
I think he gets
And
traded within 24 hours if he's found to be, innocent.
but I'm saying there's going to be 20 plus. There should be 20 plus teams calling
No, yeah,
the
100%.
Texans to get his services on their team. Like I think that the price goes up for just having a bidding war. At that, not
1,000%.
because not because of what the Texans want for him or their asking price. I think just the bidding war itself, you're going to be paying a bigger price. So you either take the risk now or you pay the price later. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tough situation, but I'm an opposing team. Like if I'm the Giants, everyone's saying the Giants should go get him, yada yada. But they seem to be a big believer in Daniel Jones. But whether you're a big believer in Daniel Jones or not, you don't go out and risk your future for a player that you don't know is going to play
Especially
ever again,
it's
like you said.
true. I mean, there are plenty of teams, but especially a team like the Giants or a team that's in a similar situation. You've been horrible for the past few years, right? I mean, there's no denying that. You've kind of finally rebuilt yourself to compete with teams, maybe finally make a run at the division, at least that. You know what I mean? Make the playoffs. At least that. You put yourself in that position. If you go then trade away, you know, all those draft picks they're asking for, Daniel Jones might even be included in there just to take a little bit less of a price. Because
Oh yeah,
obviously, well, depends. But if you get Deshaun Watson, you don't need Daniel Jones. It's a similar situation to Tua. Um, so obviously, then you no longer have Daniel Jones, but you're
you gotta get
basically
someone else
blowing
up.
up your team to then maybe find out, say he is found guilty and never plays football again. You set yourself, not only, you came back from being bad for a few years and finally set yourself up to maybe win a division. Doing that, basically blowing up your team for this guy, you're setting yourself back another like 5 years.
Yeah,
At least. At least.
and the only team that I see willing to take that chance right now is the Eagles because they have nothing to lose.
Yeah,
And
no, they
at
don't.
this point, and like they already are blowing the team up. It seems like so. The only thing that you technically lose out on is the opportunity to continue to work with Jalen Hurts because you're most likely going to be part of the trade. So, but that's the only way I see him going to the Eagles. But if it's fair game and there's multiple teams offering him, I think no one could offer a better deal than the Texans. If especially if they include Xavier Howard. So, um, but it's a big, like you said, it's a high risk, high reward situation. Like you're going to get one of the best QBs in the league, regardless. But should he actually play a game in your uniform?
He might
Is
never don a jersey. Yeah.
is a question to be asked because as much as I'm holding out, hope that he's innocent because I love Deshaun Watson as a player, like I don't know. But
Yeah.
that's why I'm not talking on the situation because until there's more evidence
Yeah.
or there's he's found guilty or not guilty because you just look at the DeAndre Baker situation. Like
Yeah.
everyone was quick to laugh at him, mock him, and just talk shit about him. And the dude was found innocent, whether you want to agree with the decision or not. Like
Yeah.
now you almost ruined his life
Yeah.
for what? So
There was
just
text exchange and everything saying that he, was being set up basically. But yeah, no, it's just that's why I said I feel like in order for him to be moved, I just think there needs to be even just a little bit more clarity on the situation because
oh for sure.
nobody has any idea what happened or what's going on. We just know that there's a lot of cases against him, 24, and that's all we really know.
But who knows if it's true? Like it could be them trying to get the bag. Not saying it is, but it also could be just that the
Yeah.
dude is a creep in his
Hey,
personal time. Who
it
knows? But
it's
we can't really say anything
yeah.
until like there's like you said there's more clarity to the
Yeah,
situation.
and I think it's the timing of it all that really makes us all beg the question of what is going on. Because if you have all these allegations, almost any other time, it's like, wow, that's pretty bad. I mean, that many allegations, more than likely he, did
He
something
did it.
wrong. But when he wants out of his team, and then all of a sudden you have this many people saying that this happened, on top of the fact that we have already seen, I think, two people speak out and say that they've must been masseuses for him before, and he was nothing but respectful. So obviously 24-2, the numbers are vastly different. I'm not saying
It's not
I
looking
believe
in his
these two.
favor.
I'm not saying I believe these two people over these 24, but it's just like, what, we don't know anything. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
So until there's more clarity, I recommend that no one speaks on the situation.
eh.
Um, but hey, if a team's willing to pull the trigger, then hopefully he dons their jersey. But there's no promises at all. But
Not at all.
to end the episode, the NBA draft is this Thursday. This episode will drop Wednesday or Thursday, but it's this Thursday at 8 p.m. And then free agency starts for the NBA August 6th at 12:01
Yes,
p.m.
sir.
Eastern time. There's a lot of people linked to the Lakers. And as Lakers fans, it's fucking hilarious. If you're not paying attention to Lakers Twitter, they said the Lakers trade Kyle Kuzma for pretty much everyone in the league.
Basically, we're
uh,
supposed to have everybody next year.
yeah, according to rumors. So it's fucking hilarious. But my question to you is specific to the NBA draft.
Hmm.
There's rumors that the Pistons who hold the number one pick are willing to listen to offers, but they seem to be more willing to trade the pick than years past. So my question to you is who makes the number one pick? Will it be the Pistons or not? Because I think the Pistons technically would make the pick, but who ends up with the number one pick? Will it be the Pistons? Like, do they keep it or do they trade it away?
I think they'll keep it. I don't think they're gonna trade it at all. Honestly, I don't know that. Like, I mean, there's definitely a lot of talent in the in this draft. I don't know that there's as much talent in terms of like the depth of talent in this draft that I've seen from years past. And so that's why I say I think that they keep it. Because I don't think this draft is as deep. I don't think a team like the Pistons is gonna want to move back, or at least not move back too far. And so that's why I think that they're gonna end up keeping it.
I want to say they're going to keep it, right? Because I think they'd be stupid to trade it
Yeah.
unless you get presented with the offer that you can't refuse.
Yeah.
And so there's only two situations in which I think they would trade it. And that would be regarding two teams. That would be regarding the Rockets because of all the draft capital they acquired from the James Harden trade. And they would only be moving down one selection to the number two. So
Mhm.
if you're not sold on Cade Cunningham, which I think you should, but I think they're also in questions of drafting him because they just drafted Killian Hayes last year that they like. So and they played the same position, right? So if you're not sold on him, then you would trade down to two with the Rockets, let the Rockets get him, and then you can draft Jalen Green, who seems to be, you can say, a better fit for what their current personnel,
And there was also
right?
reports that
Although
he
I think
really
Cunningham can
badly.
really fit
Sorry, there was reports he
really badly.
also
What?
really badly wanted to be the number one pick. Like he thinks he has a better case. But
Who, Green?
yeah,
Oh well, Green is talented. I mean,
no, 100%.
I wouldn't say that he doesn't deserve to be one, but if you're trying to get some capital and still get him, then that's probably a good move. And the other team would be the Oklahoma City Thunder. We know how much draft capital they have. I think the only issue with that was the fact that you would drop from 1 to 6, and they don't want to drop from 1 to 6. I think they want to keep a top three pick. I'm gonna say that the only way I see them trading it is with the Rockets or the Thunder, but ultimately I think they end up keeping it
Say,
because I think Cade Cunningham is too talented of a player to pass up. Even with Killian Hayes, I think they can figure it out. Killian Hayes could come off the bench. They could run, basically run the point and the shooting guard position and just switch turns in terms of bringing up the ball. I think they can make it work. but it's entirely up to them. I think passing up on him, and if you pass up on him and you don't get Jalen Green, it's a big mistake, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree. That's why I said I don't think they move. I think they want to, like you said, they want to stay right there at the top of the draft, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, and so I have nothing to say about free agency. I'm just besides that, I'm excited to see what goes on because I feel like shit's about to pop off, and not even just for the Lakers. I think it's just gonna pop off league wide. But I have nothing to say in regards to that. Do you have anything to say?
Oh man, I'm just excited to see Melo, Chris Paul, DeMar DeRozan, Damian Lillard. Who else? All those dudes. I'm ready to
Kyle
see them in
Lowry.
Lakers. Yeah, Kyle Lowry. I'm ready to see them in Lakers jerseys next year. You know what I'm saying? uh,
Uh, yeah. The only person that I truly want in free agency is Melo.
same.
Like he's the
Well,
only one. Well, I'm not saying I don't want anyone else, but he's the only one that I for sure want to see in a Laker uniform. I could care less about the rest because I
yeah,
know the rest is still going to be well. Like we're still going to
yeah.
do well, but I just feel like he's the one person I want in a Lakers uniform. No question about it.
I agree,
Um,
100%.
I feel like we need someone of his caliber. But
Not only that, but I really want to see Melo win the ring. Not saying the
yep,
Lakers are gonna for sure win it next year, but
but it's
obviously
his
they
best
have a
chance.
really good chance. I think it's his most clear chance. So you know,
I was upset that we didn't sign him before he signed with Portland,
facts.
but now we have the opportunity to do so, and we need a player of his caliber, a player of his playing style. Uh, I think it's a match made in heaven, and I think he's a. I want him on our team. There's
Not
no
to men-
question about it.
Not
There's
to
no question.
mention that we got a Celtics fan who already said that they would pause their fandom for an entire year to root for the Lakers. That is unheard of. I won't even say his name. I'm not gonna say his name.
But if he's watching, then he knows exactly what you're talking about. But that's fucking hilarious. But to add context, it was which one would you rather see? And it was AD and LeBron on both the left and the right. But on the left, it was Chris Paul and Melo alongside them, and then on the right was Kyle Lowry and DeMar
DeMar
DeRozan.
DeRozan.
And he said if the left were to happen, then that's when he said he would pause his Celtics fandom for a year to root for the Lakers.
I think
Which,
this.
but also he is a LeBron fan,
I know, but I
so
think the Celtics fandom should vote to kick him out of the fandom after saying something like that.
oh no, oh, no. Hey, we might have to recruit him over to the dark side.
I wouldn't mind. I
I
wouldn't
mean,
mind.
I mean the Lakers are the better franchise to begin with, so it doesn't even matter.
I agree. I agree.
But with that being said, we're happy for you guys to tune in. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you enjoyed what you watched or you listened to, uh, follow us along our journey and help us by commenting on what you want us to talk about or your opinion on what we already talked about. Uh, and go show love to everybody that we
Uh,
always tell you to. What the people, our boys at the Expansion Pack podcast, Harv with his music, RJ Sows with his music, Nico with his MMA, our guys that we just interviewed with, Tyshawn James and Dexter Lawson Jr. They both play for Central Connecticut State University. Their season is upcoming. We have another interview coming soon, so stay tuned for that one. You got anything to add?
nah, man. Just like Devin said, leave comments, like, follow, subscribe. If you're not sharing with your friends, you're doing something wrong. And just go show love to all the guests we've had on here. Support what they've got going on in their lives as well. And it's just as simple as that, man. Just keep supporting.
Alrighty. So, with that being said, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, peace.
Deuces.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.